Otto's Tales. Today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Ruff, ruff! I'm Otto. Today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. My best friend Dennis jumped onto the couch. Hey Otto, he shouted. It's time for another adventure. Oh boy, I barked. I love going back in time and learning about history. What are we going to do today? Dennis said, today we're going to learn about Martin Luther King Jr. He was a very important American. He changed the history of our country and the world. We pretended our couch was a station wagon and Dennis started to drive. Zoom! With my head sticking out the window, we drove to 1955. We stopped in Alabama, where there was racial segregation. Black and white people couldn't be together. There was forced separation. Jim Crow laws were in place, which were mean and unfair. Bathrooms and water fountains were illegal for both races to share. Dennis, I said, these signs of segregation are a terrible sight. Yes, Otto, the way black people are being treated just isn't right. We saw a woman getting on a bus and I asked my friend, who's that? Her name is Rosa Parks, said Dennis, and on the bus she sat. She was in the front section for whites, even though she was black. Get up, they told her. You have to go to the back. Rosa was tired of this unfair treatment and refused to move. The situation for blacks, she said, has to be improved. I've heard about what Rosa Parks did, Dennis whispered to me. Her name is now in history books for everyone to see. Dennis continued. She helped the Montgomery bus boycott begin in the South. The news of this movement spread by flyers and word of mouth. Zoom! We flew forward 4 days to a church on Holt Street. I barked, look at the thousands of people all coming here to meet. There was a man standing in front, speaking to the crowd. Then the people clapped and cheered. The sound was so loud. I asked, is that the leader of this important movement? Yes, said Dennis. Martin Luther King Jr. fought for blacks' improvement. We ran up to him and said, how do you do? We're Dennis and Otto. It's an honor to meet you. Hello, he said. My name is Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. I said, we're learning about the civil rights movement. Such an important thing. I've learned all about you, Dennis said. You're a local pastor. When it comes to giving speeches, you're a true master. I said, we see that blacks are segregated and that isn't right. Yes, said Reverend King. The equal treatment of all races is just a moral fight. He continued, we believe in America, but we will not suffer in silence. We will make our voices heard, though we will never use violence. Dennis whispered, what happened to Reverend King? Let's get back into our car, Otto, to see what the future will bring. Come on, Dennis, I said. I want to see. Back in our station wagon and zoom! Off to 1963. Where are we, Dennis? And what is all this? It's the March on Washington, a sight not to be missed. Then we heard a familiar voice begin to preach. We looked up and realized Reverend King was giving a speech. He said, the Founding Fathers made equality the promise of the United States. It's time to fulfill that promise and end discrimination by race. I have a dream, said Dr. King, that my children will live in a world of racial integration. I dream that things will be better for them and the next generation. I have a dream that my children, continued this amazing orator, won't be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Our hearts were filled with hope as we watched King's inspiring speech. This message of equality, said Dennis, is something every teacher should teach. Hopeful about the future, we got into our car and began to drive. Zoom! We flew forward again to the year 1965. We arrived at the White House on a hot summer day. That's President Johnson, said Dennis. Some call him LBJ. But then came the real surprise. To our great delight, next to the president, Reverend King came into sight. I asked Dr. King, "What is happening?" while Dennis scratched my back. With a proud smile, he replied, "The president is signing the Voting Rights Act." "Sounds important," I said. "What does it do?" "It ensures all blacks can vote. It's a real breakthrough." Dr. King continued, "There was also the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which means that blacks and whites can't be segregated anymore." "That's wonderful," I said. "We must treat everyone well and be kind." "Yes, Otto," said Dennis. "We should all be colorblind." "We've got to get home," we said. And then again, zoom! Vroom, vroom, vroom! Back to Dennis's room. "That was my favorite adventure yet," I barked. "You say that every time, Otto." "Well, I never knew what an important man Martin Luther King Jr. was." "Yes, Otto, he was a true defender of equality and justice." Did he really change the world with his message that we shouldn't judge others by the color of their skin? He sure did, Otto. On Martin Luther King Jr. Day, we remember his many achievements. He reminds us that all Americans are entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. "I'm so glad we got to meet him," I barked. "Me too, Otto. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Ruff! Ruff! See you in our next adventure, Dennis and Otto."